morning. This morning I'm talking about building your future. I find it amazing, the word future. It's not a word that we think of these days, is it? You know, what is our future going to be like in the most beautiful, positive, glorious, fantastic way? So I thought the talk this morning would be significant to lift us up and to think what our possibilities are and not get stuck in what the news is trying to convince us of. A master described how the Buddha encouraged his monks by stating that those who practice diligently would surely be enlightened in 7 days, or if not in 7 days, then in 7 months or 7 years. A young American monk heard this and asked, well, if this is true, then I want to try it. The master promised him that if he was continuously mindful without a break for 7 days, he would be enlightened. Right on. So, as you can imagine, excitedly, the young monk started his 7 days, only to be lost in forgetfulness 10 minutes later. So coming back to himself, he again started his 7 days, only to become lost once more in mindless thought. Perhaps he was thinking about what he would do after his enlightenment. Again and again, he began his 7 days, and again, he lost his continuity of mindfulness. So a week later, he was not enlightened, but he had become very aware of his habitual fantasies and his wandering mind. A most instructive way to begin his practice on the path to real awakening. So we are on the path of spiritual perfection, a path that requires, even demands, progressive striving. So perfection, what is perfection? It almost seems unreachable. When I was young and an aspiring musician, I mean really young, I would practice for hours and hours, day after day after day. I had 2, sometimes 3 music lessons every single week. If you can imagine, I was very involved with music. And yet I never reached the perfection of the masters, the master violinist, the master pianist. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get there. But the teacher kept saying, you can better yourself. Just do this, do that, do this, do that. I never reached that level of perfection, and I could probably have worked harder, but comparing it to what we do on a day-to-day basis as just, surviving our day-to-day life, and then to think about our spiritual life, which is, as we're studying and traveling this path of Agni Yoga, on the path of self-perfectment. And we also believe in the continuation of life. We're not going to reach perfection in 7 minutes or 7 days or 7 months or 7 years. It's an ongoing process. So I imagined one day as a violinist, what would it be like to have achieved that absolute perfection? Well, I would have quit. I mean, not having reached that, it was, just an imaginative thought, well, I guess I'll just quit. If I were perfect, I would just quit. So life doesn't let us just quit. Darkness lets us quit, but light is inspiring. It's encouraging us. Keep on, keeping on, right? So, the ever-expanding path of perfection is what is called the path of the illumined ones. Isn't that beautiful? See, if I had had music teachers that said, look, and this is what happened to me, is that I became aware of the composer whose music that I was playing and practicing all of those hours. I want to learn about this person that wrote all this music that I'm having to practice for hours on end. So I learned about these great violinists and the great composers, and that was the point of inspiration. So we have wonderful teachers, wonderful teaching to inspire us as we travel this path of the illumined ones. A disciple is a light bearer, not of a particular religion, not of a particular country, but of the world. They are torch bearers, beacons of light. Wherever they live, whichever their faith, their psychology, or their philosophical belief, they express their light as the axis of their life. It is from this axis that they illumine their environment, locally and globally. Such a person is a world disciple. So the life of a disciple is the life of service. It is a soul level. The life of a disciple is not to be served, but to serve. You see the difference between the ordinary man and the illumined one? If the disciple is not consciously striving on the path of perfection, then they are apt to become distracted by what? Can you imagine? If the disciple is not consciously striving on the path, they are apt to become distracted by the growth of their ego, by the growth of their vanity. Oh, think about that. Well, I can't talk about everything I'm thinking about, but just think about. I'm going to repeat this because it's not something we want to be if we are on this journey of the path of perfection, of self-perfectment, of the path of the illumined one. It's not what we want to be. We don't want to be distracted by the fact that our ego is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Or our vanity is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's not the destination of the unfolding human soul. The destination of the unfolding human soul is illumination, not ego and vanity. Those are two major obstacles if we have not cleansed ourselves of these two monstrous hindrances. Then we are artificially programming our future. The antithesis of such artificial programming is to let the core of our being gain control, more control over this artificial programming. So that step by step, through observation, concentration, meditation, and contemplation, we know who we really are. It's not that you haven't heard these words before. What I'm hoping is that you can take the words and exemplify them. If we can take these words and exemplify them, put them into application, we are increasing our freedom, increasing the freedom of our soul, releasing that beautiful light and love and power we call our unfolding soul. We're releasing that soul into a freedom it's never experienced before. This process includes certain disciplines besides observation, concentration, meditation, and contemplation. Last Sunday, I talked about some of those disciplines. One of the disciplines I did not talk about was the discipline of indifference. Indifference to hatred, fear, anger, jealousy, revenge, and slander. Indifference means that we don't become entrapped in anger. We don't become entrapped in revenge, entrapped in jealousy. We become indifferent to these vices because these vices are darkness and creates a cloud or a sphere that of which, oh, I need an editor. Let's see. The antithesis of which is artificial programming. As the disciple lives a life of creative service and realizes the importance of their ever-expanding perfection, they also recognize the importance of these disciplines as part of the path of perfection, and that's Agni Yoga, the path of self-perfectment, which requires spiritual disciplines. So the teaching is always available to us, but we must be ready. There's a most beautiful poem by Jalaluddin Rumi. All of you know he's a famous Eastern scholar from the Middle Ages. And this is what he talked about in one of his famous poems about the future. It reads, "Once I was a rock. Then I died as a rock, and I became a flower. I died as a flower, and then I became a bird. I died as a bird, and then I became a man. When did I ever decrease by dying?" Rumi was talking about the 4 of the 7 kingdoms in nature: the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. But there are 3 other kingdoms. The one toward we are all presently striving toward, called the superhuman kingdom, the supermundane. The supermundane is our future. The 5th kingdom of nature is the kingdom of Christ. It is the masters of wisdom. It is the spiritual hierarchy. That's the supermundane. To become part of the next kingdom, the 5th kingdom, we need to learn about the qualification. What are the qualifications to enter that kingdom? And then work and strive and evolve to get there, because that's our future. Whatever our present condition is, we can make our understanding and our vision of the future in such a way that our actions, our goals, especially our goals, determine our present activities. Our goals determine our present activities. So we're using the future to control the present through our goals. Master Moria wrote, "He who carries the knowledge of the future can walk boldly even upon shaky stones. That's from Leaves of Moria's Garden, Volume 2, page 128, number 8. He who carries the knowledge of the future can walk boldly, even upon shaky stones. Success is then when we can set forth upon a new journey. The wish is already part of the fulfillment. Courageously advance to light. The parting is a forerunner of the meeting. St. Sergius used to say, you must depart, otherwise you cannot meet again. If you want to advance, if you want to evolve, you must have a future in your mind. That future will be whatever you want it to be. Some people don't have a future because they don't visualize. They're so stuck in today, in my anger, in my jealousy, in my envy, in my disgust, in my fears, and so forth. So they don't have a future because they're not visionaries. They don't imagine or think about something that they want to be in the future. They might think, I don't want this. This is not what I want to be. But they stop. If you don't have a future in your mind, you don't have a destination. If you don't have a destination, that means you are wandering. And when you are wandering, you're wasting your time and energy in life. So, first we must put into our mind the idea that we are going to build a future for ourselves. Whether we're an individual, a family, a group, a nation, this is applicable to every single element as an individual, say as a family, as a group, as a nation, as a planet. We are going to build a future for ourselves. Next, we can have a future only when we consciously build a future. And do not consider your age as a factor. I was so excited to learn this. For the future is within you. See, this is the next, little opening of the portal to tell us what a future is. The future is within us. It's not based on the diagnosis of a doctor. It's not based on what mom or dad told us when we were little. It's not based on what our enemies tell us we are or aren't. Because the future is within us. And like a sail on a ship, the future will carry us on the oceans toward our destiny. Our destiny is an ever-expanding path. If we give up anywhere along this path, then how are we going to continue? Many people believe in reincarnation, which is very beautiful. If we are on an ever-expanding path toward the future, then when we are reborn, we will continue our work wherever we find ourselves. So where are you today? Let's say that on your, I'm sorry to put this out. Let's say this is your last day on this planet. Where are you today? Because that's where you're going to continue in your next lifetime. When we are reborn, we will continue our work wherever we find ourselves. The future is not limited by the difficulties in our life. The difficulties in our life, listen to this, the difficulties in our life are planned by the computer of the universe in such a way that unless those difficulties were there, you would never advance. Isn't that beautiful? That's why this teaching is so beautiful. It's so practical. And this is why we call the teachings life. Difficulties in our life are planned by the computer of the universe in such a way that unless those difficulties were there, we would never advance, we would never unfold, we would never expand our consciousness. The minute we have difficulties, some give up. But never, never give up. You know who said that? Of course you do. So I'm not even going to say his name. Success is just around the corner. One step more, and you would make it. See, but some people turn back and they give up. Instead of giving up, we must realize that we are building our future. Then we will better understand the difficulties that will face us. Abraham Lincoln, for instance, if he had not faced all of his difficulties, he would not have had a future, which led him to become a president of a country. He became a somebody because of the difficulties in his life. If you want to be somebody, then ask for difficulties so you can overcome them. Another point in building your future is not to be affected by what people say about you or do against you. If you are a leader of a group, this also applies to your group. Do not be affected by what people say about yourself or do against you or your family or your group. If you decide that you want to be a great leader but worry about what people are going to say about you and how much they are going to slander you, you're never going to proceed on your path. This is one of the fiery tests of discipleship. People will slander you. They will say things against you, maybe even those who are closest to you. But you're not going to listen because you know that these things happen, and it will be like the wind in your sails. These events are going to take you to your future. But on the path of discipleship, these things will help us to understand the nature of a human being being better. And in that understanding, you will broaden and expand your consciousness. So interesting. I don't have all the details down. I wish I did in my mind that I could share with you, but I have a superficial understanding. I've been, part of us, some of us in the group are editing a translation of all the notebooks of Helena Rourke, hundreds of notebooks. We're on number 17. Now, I was reading through the translation of Notebook 17, and I came across the name of a musician, a composer, and I'd never heard of him before. Oh, I can't pronounce. It's like Vasily. I can't pronounce his last name. It's very Russian. Anyway, so I came across the name of this conductor and composer, and in Notebook 17, which is the notebook of Helena Rourke's writings, her note-taking. And I thought, wow, I've never heard of this guy, so I looked him up. And as I was learning more about him through other writings of Helena Rourke, through her, I learned that she had a respect for his talent. She said he was such a gifted man, and he was eventually invited to come over to America and to teach theory and composition to the students that were registered in the Master Institute of United Arts. Wow, that's really great. That's who this guy is. And I went on the internet to try to find his music, and it was sort of there, but I could never find it. His name was there, and the indication of his music was there. Could never find it. But the point is this: as talented as this man was, Helena Rourke said he was, and this is my paraphrase, he's still childish. So that told me two things. Number one, she respected his talent and his gifts enough to invite him to teach at the Master Institute of United Arts, but she said he has a lot of work to do. She talked about his wife. It was a lovely lady, but very simple. So she was so direct in her observation without judgment. She observed and watched and understood, but did not judge. It was very interesting. To me, it was very interesting, and it broadened and expanded my consciousness. So I spent, I don't know, about an hour and a half, I guess, researching this man and learned more about his wife, and that he still had some spiritual work to do. So what does that tell us? It tells us we can come into this lifetime with a remarkable gift, but we're still not integrated. We still have to begin to work on ourselves. So we can't take refuge in an accomplishment that we bring into this lifetime and say, this is all I need to be. So when I read what she said about this guy, it helped me to understand the nature of a human being better and broaden my understanding. The beauty of understanding reincarnation is that our future will not be affected by the death of our body. Well, think about this idea. If your clothes are old, we replace them. Well, sometimes. Sometimes we just leave them hanging in our closet because we don't want to get rid of them. But realistically, the metaphor here is that if we die, we're going to receive a beautiful new one, and we worked hard, something we worked hard to have. So why worry? The soul continues. One day, a young member of my family died. He was 21 years old. He was so beautiful, tall, blonde. He was about 6'3", such a wonderful heart. I can remember him standing in front of his demolished sports car and thinking, this car is representative of what happened to his body. Now he will have a new, more beautiful body, so he can continue his future. This thought healed my sense of loss, and it was a deep sense. She was a magnificent human being. Died way too young, 21 years old. It was a very sad day. The next idea is very profound. Your future is not affected by your past failures. Now, this is the key. Your future is not affected by your past failures as long as you don't identify yourself with them. You take responsibility for them, but you don't identify them. You don't let your failures control you. Just like you don't let your enemies control you. You don't let slander control you. You can paralyze yourself with guilt and become buried in your guilt in such a way that your future will become negatively affected. This is one of the greatest tests for those who are on the path of discipleship. To overcome these feelings of guilt, you must regenerate yourself, renew yourself, just like the eagle which renews its feathers. You are going to grow new feathers and fly to new heights. And I keep telling my parrot that. It's molted so much that he only has one flight feather left. You're going to be this beautiful bird. I talked to the Happy Parrot store yesterday, and they said, wait until April. He'll be beautiful again and not so grumpy. She'll grow to new feathers with new feathers and fly to new heights. Well, we'll have to clip those feathers because we don't want her climbing to heights. Anyway, so the past is buried. Don't worry about your past failures and you know why? Because karma will bring its bill. So don't worry about it. As we strive to build the future, we can then be rich enough to pay that bill without feeling burdened. Our future is our unfolding divinity. What does this mean? It means that our future is the progressive unfoldment of our inner potentials. That's our unfolding divinity. It's the unfoldment of our inner potentials, our inner glory, our beauty. It doesn't matter what you call it, but there is one common denominator that as we go toward our divinity, we become a more useful person. See, this is what I was learning from what I read yesterday by Helena Rourke about the young gifted man composer. So gifted that he was teaching theory in composition. And if you've ever studied theory and composition like I did in college, you know that it's complicated. It's very complicated. You almost have to be a mathematician of music to understand it. But he hadn't begun to tap his inner potential. As you go toward your divinity, you become a more useful person. So no matter the accomplishment of this composer, he could have been even more useful. And from what, well, I opened the door to talk about this guy, and I really wasn't prepared, but I was so impressed by this story, and I've learned so much about the psychology behind this event and how Helena Rourke saw this young man whom she highly respected, but there was a but there, or yet, or even still. So let us take that example and ask ourselves, how can we be a more useful person? And in trying to find the answer to that question, we will begin to unfold our divine potential. What can I do to become a more useful person? What matters is that as we get closer to our inner divinity, we become more useful. We become more helpful. People come toward us like ants go to honey because they know that you can help them. The greatest reward of a human being is to be in a position, in a condition of beingness where you can help others. That is the path of illumination, the path of discipleship, where we bring light and love and power to others. M.M. wrote, "He who carries the knowledge of the future can walk boldly even upon shaky stones." Many of your friends are shaky rocks. Some people come and promise things. People who come with their beauty and makeup and smiles. And you see I'm not going to say that. And you see shaky, shaky rocks. Some people come with their beauty and their makeup and their knowledge and their degrees and their this and that, but you see shaky rocks. You see people who start one page, but they don't continue the next page. They start a meditation course, and 6 months later, they're gone. A shaky rock. You see people who appear like friends, and then go and stab you in your back, from the back. I have to repeat this. You see people who appear like friends, and then go and stab you in the back. They are shaky rocks. See, don't identify. Just observe. Sometimes Master Moria calls them flickering lights. The beautiful thing is that he knows that they are shaky stones, and he buries them under his feet and continues his journey. In choosing the future, we will never count on shaky rocks, because they provide you a path to pass over the river. Don't count on them. A disciple of the future does not consider who is going to help them or who is going to hinder their path, because both the one of hindrance and the one of assistance are books from which the leader learns their wisdom. Whatever you're going to denote, whatever you're doing is to promote the purpose of God, the Most High. I'll never forget that wonderful day when Torben called me into his office, and I had an hour with him where he was just loading me up with books, opening the book and saying, read this, look at this, what do you think about this? I could only remember half of what he said because I was always in such a state of bliss when I was around him. It was hard to concentrate. But what I remembered at the end of that hour of being with him, he said, you and I, we serve the Lord. That is who we are. That is what we do. That's what's important. We serve the Lord. Whatever you are doing is to promote the purpose of God, the Most High. So do not be afraid of shaky stones, although you must know that they are shaky. This is important to know in case you depend on a shaky stone, or you offer all of your assistance to such a shaky stone and the person dumps you. When Mother Teresa started her work, she never considered getting help from others. What she asked for was God's help, and help from those who had awakened spirits. She didn't want nor ask for help from those with dead spirits and big egos. This is what the disciple who has a sense of future must do. A disciple with a sense of future does not consider who is going to help them or who is going to hinder their path, because both the one of assistance and the one of hindrances are books from which the disciple will be learning their wisdom. So we thank and express our gratitude to those who are hindering and to those who are serving. No one can do anything for you or anyone else unless that person is doing it for the one almighty creator of the universe. Do you see? This is the ageless wisdom. It is so beautiful. When you want to walk the path of discipleship, when you want to build a future about what you want your future to be, you can reach certain conclusions. Let's say that in your future you want to be painless, physically painless, emotionally without pain, mentally without pain. Not bad to think about this. I suspect most of us would like a future that's going to be pain-free. Then we must take an assessment of our life and ask, am I causing pain and suffering to others? Do you have the boldness, the courage to ask yourself that question with a true answer? Let's say that you are a politician. How are you going to answer that question? Perhaps you are a nuclear scientist. How are you going to answer that question? Perhaps you are a spiritual leader. How are you going to answer that question? Karma sees and records everything. Our world leaders don't seem to know about this. Let's say that in your future you want to be joyful. Can you be joyful in your family when every member of your family is clinically depressed? You can't. So what is the alternative? First, you must have joy. Then you can give that joy to your family. Give joy to others. Build a joyful environment around yourself. We all want a creative, successful future. If you are the leader of a country where there are homeless people and beggars, are you building a future of success for yourself and others? The disciple has to look very carefully at these kinds of things. We can be successful only among those who are successful. That's a well-known fact in the teaching, and so I'm repeating what the teaching is saying. We can be successful only among those who are successful. So those who are walking the path of discipleship, the path of the ever-expanding future, must create an environment around themselves where all are successful or where all are joyful. So light bearers who are carrying the torch of light and love and power into the future, carrying light and love and power into the future, must think about these things. You want to be a millionaire. Will it be at the expense of others? Will you make others dependent on you? Here, I'll give you a little bit of money, but then you owe me. You want to be loved in your future. Most all of us do want this to be part of our future. How beautiful it is to be loved. Once a man came to me, he told me what he did to slander my work, and then said, I'm really sorry and I do love you. I told him that it's easy to hate others and sometimes it's very hard to love others. If you want people to love you, then shine your beauty, your sincerity, your truthfulness, your joy on them so they will love you. But a bearer of light and love will love others more than he loves himself. The verse said, success is then when the consummation is beautiful. What that means, consummation means conclusion. Success is when you reach the end of your life and your life is beautiful. Consummation means that you are successful only when the conclusion is beautiful. This is the crown of your success. Bearers of light will live their lives in such a way that as they get older and older, they will feel that they did something great and will end that life in beauty. Think about the great ones that we know. Think about Torquem Saradarian, our mentor. Think about Nicholas and Helena Rohr. We know how they ended their lives. And we can say they felt that they did something great and beautiful. Then in that beauty, we're going to enter into a new journey, a new life. When a disciple starts something new, a new project, a new book, a new painting, a new musical composition, they must first complete the former project so that their success will take them into the new and even more successful movement or achievement. See, do you understand? It's like you can't start something here and say, oh, wait. You know, I'm going to be more successful. Let me go over here. Or let me go over there. This is bigger and better, and I'll be better known, when you didn't finish up what you started over here. Now you've got a broken future. You don't have a strong foundation upon which to build the next stage, because you left that stage unfinished. Do you understand? Okay. The wise sage, and I'm repeating myself, the parting is the forerunner of the meeting, and St. Sergius used to say, you must depart, otherwise you cannot meet again. It means that the light bearer, the disciple, will meet that achievement again on a higher scale. When they start something new, they will achieve again. The disciple's success depends only on starting something new on a higher level, on a new spiral. This is how we are going to build our future. If, on the other hand, you leave your project in a mess, in the future, when you come back, you will come back to the mess you created. And let me end with this interesting little story. There was a Sufi, Nasruddin, creating, let me start again. There was a Sufi, Nasruddin, eating a poor man's diet of chickpeas and bread. Chickpeas and bread. That's like hummus and bread, right? Okay, not so bad. Except that if that's the only thing you're eating, you might not really enjoy it that much. So here's this Sufi eating a poor man's diet of chickpeas and bread. His neighbor, who claimed to be a wise man, was living in a grand house and dining on sumptuous meals provided by the emperor himself. The Sufi's neighbor told Nasruddin, if only you would learn to flatter the emperor and be subservient like I do, you would not have to live on chickpeas and bread. Nasruddin replied, and if only you would learn to live on chickpeas and bread like I do, you would not have to flatter and live subservient to the emperor. At a United Nations Children's Convention, a little girl said, people in the world are collecting money and using it to make atom bombs to kill each other. What kind of future is that? Whatever a person sows, he reaps. Building your future. So hopefully this has opened your eyes to think about your own, how you're going to build your future.